The Dave Hooker Show. A presentation of Off the Hook Sports. Objective insight, expertise, top guests. Available on YouTube, Apple, Spotify, and the Off the Hook Sports app. Download now for free. Also available on offthehooksports.com.
I compute and obey.
Now to Dave Hooker.
Ready.
Loaded up like a tractor trailer. Here we go. A big show on tap today. It's a Wednesday, so Jimmy Hyams will join us here in just a matter of seconds. And you know we love that. The Vols up to number 9 in both polls. We'll take a look at the teams ahead of them. Who would Tennessee beat if they were playing them instead of Austin Peay this weekend? Speaking of Austin Peay, 5 balls to watch for the Vols, 5 Austin Peay Governors to watch, as well as we'll begin to break down that game a little bit. And also T. Martin, part of the first all-black quarterback room in NFL history. Could he be a head coach one day? Let's go ahead and bring in the one, the only, Jimmy Hyams. He is a Hall of Famer. Him and John Adams, 2 Hall of Famers on this program, and we certainly appreciate that. Jimmy at least doesn't poo-poo the Hall of Fame, where John's always like, well, you know, it's just political. And Jimmy, how are you, sir?
I'm doing fine. You can't imagine the strings I had to pull to get John Adams in the Hall of Fame. My God.
I bet.
Oh, boy. The vote was close.
Everybody's like, I like Jimmy on the board of selection committee, but maybe no more. So, Jimmy, you were at the U.S. Open last week.
Yeah.
Thoughts on that?
Well, I thoroughly enjoyed it. It's been on my bucket list. It's something I was unable to do when I was working full time. And my wife kind of helped arrange this trip a few weeks ago. So we went up and saw some of the greatest tennis players in the world. Novak Djokovic. We saw Carlos Alcaraz. We saw Venus Williams in her last match. I saw John Isner, who retired. I saw Ben Shelton play. There were a lot of tremendous players that had an opportunity to watch. So it was a lot of fun. I saw 3 days of tennis and thoroughly enjoyed it.
Yep, sounds pretty cool. We've got a lot to get to as college football will be the topic of discussion. Jimmy and I are kicking around a tennis show on our YouTube channel at one point. I would rely heavily on Jimmy with that. It would be setup question after setup question. Here we go right now. Caleb, by the way, how are you on this beautiful day?
Pretty good. Sorry, I was just laughing at the pun setup question. I caught that.
Oh, I didn't even mean to say it. I've just volleyed that your way. Here we go. Today's tough question.
Today's tough question. Take a side. Take a stand. The Dave Hooker Show. A presentation of offthehooksports.com.
Today's tough question is brought to you by Andy Mason of AndyMasonRealEstate.com. Tennessee number 9 in both the AP poll, the one that matters, and then the coaches poll, which sports information directors do. So they are number 9 in both. And we want to, first of all, assess, is that about right? And then I want to look at the 8 teams that are ahead of Tennessee. Would Tennessee beat those teams if they were playing them on Saturday instead of Austin Peay? So, Jimmy, let me start with you. What do you think about number 9?
I think it's about right. When you look at what everybody else did, I don't have any argument with being Tennessee in that position. Going into the season, I thought they would be ranked between 10 and 12. That's about where they were. And when you watched them play against Virginia, one of the things that you would give them props for, which they looked a little bit better than I thought they would, was on defense. That defense is fast. They can run. They're more athletic than I think than they were a year ago. I think they are deeper than they were a year ago. And look, I get that Virginia is terrible. I understand that. But speed is speed. And when you can get off the ball like they did and you play that fast, I think that is what gives me more confidence in saying I think Tennessee's a top 10 team, because I think this defense has improved.
Caleb, think 9's about right?
Yeah, I think 9's about right. I'm with Jimmy. This isn't necessarily a whether or not I think teams ahead of them are better than them or not. To me, it's resume based to a certain degree. So I can't knock a Florida State being ahead of them when Florida State beat LSU, as little as I believe in Florida State long term. So yeah, I think 9 is about right.
All right, here we go. Let's look at the teams ahead of them. Who would Tennessee beat? So let's start with Washington at number 8. Jim, do we want to say neutral site or do we want to say at Neyland Stadium? We can workshop this as we go. What do you think?
I'd say we go neutral site. So I'm going to say in a neutral site, I think Tennessee beat Washington. Washington has a very explosive offense, score a lot of points. Michael Penix, who was a former Tennessee commit and an Indiana reject, is out there throwing it all over the ballpark, and he's got outstanding receivers. But I don't think Washington's defense is as good as Tennessee's defense. So I think Tennessee would find a way to get one more stop. I think Tennessee beat Washington.
Caleb, I agree with that.
I agree. I think Michael Penix is really regretting not committing to play for Butch Jones. I'm sure he knows that Butch Jones would have developed him so much more than. I'm sorry.
What if he showed up and he was such a star that Butch Jones was still the head coach? Well, that couldn't have happened, right?
Sorry.
No, I was just playing for Butch Jones. I can't even imagine after the weekend he had. That would be horrible.
Yeah, his star is shining after that Oklahoma game, isn't it?
With the former Tennessee quarterback and JT Strout starting for him.
Well, he's got a 5-star heart.
Yeah, this is like covering nowadays. Just covering college football is like covering recruiting back in the day. All these names moving around, committed to this team. I mean, it's why I stopped covering recruiting. It was just a little bit too much. So next up would be Penn State at number 8, neutral site. Does Tennessee beat Penn State at number 8?
I think Tennessee could beat Penn State. Penn State, now I think they've got a pretty good quarterback who's underrated in Drew Aller. They have a really good 1-2 running punch. But I don't think – they got one really good receiver. I don't know that Penn State offensively could keep up with Tennessee. So I think Tennessee's every bit as good as Penn State. I think Tennessee could very well beat Penn State.
I think they would. I do. I think Penn State's a little bit overrated. I do like what you said about the quarterback play, though, Caleb.
This is a total toss-up to me. And the reason it's a total – watching Penn State over the weekend, I will say the reason a lot of people were higher on Penn State going into the year was the offensive line. The hype behind the offensive line is real. And so I think the question would be, can Tennessee get the same type of pressure off the edge that they got against Virginia? And I'm not so sure they could. So I'm going to say Penn State, but it'd be by 1 in overtime. It'd be something crazy. It's a total toss-up. So I'll lean Penn State a little bit.
Tracy Morgan, what say you?
That's crazy.
All right, Southern California, USC. How about Tennessee playing USC? If they were playing this weekend, USC is at number 7. Who wins that football game?
I would lean a little bit towards Southern Cal. Now, Southern Cal's defense isn't very good, so this gets down to another one of those. The first one to 50 probably wins. But I think that the Southern Cal offense is a little bit further ahead than Tennessee's. They've got a Heisman Trophy winning quarterback. It's hard to argue that he's not better than Joe Milton. They got a transfer from Arizona named Dorian Singer that I thought, man, that guy's going to light it up. Well, he's like their 4th best receiver. Are you kidding me? So I think Southern Cal's offense is so good. I would take Southern Cal.
All right, what about you, Caleb?
I'm basically ditto what Jimmy said. I totally agree. The question is, Tennessee USC football, Tennessee USC basketball. Which game ends up with more points?
Oh, football.
I think football too. I don't trust.
Well,
I think
Kevin O'Neal. If Kevin O'Neal was still at Southern Cal, it'd definitely be football.
Oh, absolutely. Oh my gosh, yes. Rick Barnes and Kevin O'Neal going at head-to-head. That would have to be the most boring matchup of all time.
Guys, what about Ohio State at number 5, neutral site? Tennessee beat Ohio State or not?
Given the history, I got to go Ohio State. I think they're a pretty complete team. Although I'll say this, their quarterback play was a little bit iffy against Indiana. I think they're better than that, but I also think Ohio State probably has a better roster right now than Tennessee. I'd go Buckeyes.
Caleb, I would go Ohio State as well.
Well, I said Penn State earlier. I think I'm going to go Tennessee over Ohio State. I think
Ohio State. That tells me that you think Penn State's better than Ohio State.
This year, I think they are. Ohio State doesn't have a quarterback. Kyle McCord was bad in that game. And also just now, yes, I trust Josh Heupel over James Franklin too, but coaching wise, I'm trusting Josh Heupel over Ryan Day. I think Ohio State's got a quarterback issue. They are better everywhere else, but they got a problem at signal caller right now.
Florida State, the Seminoles. I'll go ahead and say I think Tennessee wins this ball game. I give Florida State a lot of credit, but Jimmy, I think Tennessee's a better football team as a whole than Florida State after seeing them.
I want to hear what Caleb says. I think he was ragging on those Seminoles a little earlier. Caleb, what do you think?
Jimmy's taking those seats.
I am not changing my tune. I think last week was a collection of things that all just happened and spiraled at once, but I still say Florida State's overrated. And I think Tennessee beats Florida State. If LSU keeps Harold Perkins at edge rusher and Mason Smith isn't suspended, LSU wins that game. And so I'm going Tennessee beats Florida State.
All right, Alabama. I don't know what to take.
We got to hear Jimmy's take.
Jimmy. State. Yeah, Jimmy. Sorry.
Tennessee barely. Look, I think Florida State's pretty good. I think Jordan Travis is terrific. I think he's got two great receivers led by Keon Coleman, the Michigan State transfer. Their running game was not that effective. Here's the thing that was funny about the LSU-Florida State game. I kept hearing about Florida State just ran them out of the ballpark, only in the second half. LSU outplayed Florida State in the first half, had about 80 more yards, and if it wasn't for some stupid play calling and bundling when you got inside the 10-yard line, LSU still had the lead, right, 17-14. So LSU was the better team in the first half. Florida State was much better in the second half, but I would take Tennessee over the Seminoles.
I'm going to go first on Bama at number 3. I take Tennessee for 2 reasons. One, I'm not sold on Jalen Milroe after a fantastic performance in week 1, so I like the quarterback matchup. And 2, I still think of that game last year in which he had, I believe, 3 turnovers. With Tennessee's pressure, I think they could force 1 or 2. So I'll go first here. I think neutral site Tennessee beats Alabama.
I've got Alabama because it's hard to beat Saban 2 years in a row. Now, we did say neutral site. In Tuscaloosa, I would clearly take Alabama. Neutral site is going to be closer. Dave, I agree with you about Milroe. I'm not sold on him in spite of the 5 total touchdowns he had last week. I still don't think he's a real accomplished passer. But I would take Alabama because it's just so hard to beat Saban 2 years in a row.
Caleb?
I'm with both y'all about Milroe, but I'd still take Alabama, largely because I know we have faith in Joe Milton to be serviceable this year, but I think you have to be an out-of-this-world quarterback and an out-of-this-world game to beat Nick Saban, and I don't think Joe Milton's capable of doing what Hendon Hooker did last year to Alabama. I don't think that's possible.
Remind you that today's tough question before we get to Michigan and Georgia is brought to you by Andy Mason, AndyMasonRealEstate.com. Best service and prices in the biz. He's my realtor. He should be yours. AndyMasonRealEstate.com. A lot of people are making real estate moves. Go to AndyMasonRealEstate.com for the absolute elite with Elite Realty and your realtor services. So Michigan, number 2, Jim.
I guess I'm going to go with Michigan. They kind of bore me when I watch them, but they've got 2 really good running backs. They've got a good quarterback. They've had their roster build up over the last few years. They're pretty darn talented. They have a complete team. I would go with Michigan.
I got no argument with that, even though I wonder if Tennessee could get a lead and take control of that game with their offense. But still, I would take Michigan. Caleb?
I was so inspired by Michigan honoring Jim Harbaugh over the weekend after the tragic news of him being suspended for 3 games. You know, they treated it like he was dying of cancer. And so I'm going to go with Michigan on that.
Would everybody say Georgia at number 1 until we see otherwise?
Yes.
Nope.
Whoa.
Yeah. Oh, we got a nope.
We got a nope. I know I'm all over the place. Jimmy, I have ranted about this with Dave all off season. If there's somebody, they always say there's somebody I don't bet against. There's somebody I religiously bet against, and it's Mike Bobo as an offensive coordinator. If Mike Bobo was coaching the other side, I'm always willing to bet on. He is a Jim McElwain protege. Okay, and we're going to see Jim McElwain running Georgia's offense. They don't look like they got a quarterback right now. Yes, I'm saying it. If Tennessee played Georgia on a neutral site, they'd win right now.
Wow. Jimmy, I don't know what to say. The guy hates Mike Bobo like I hate fascism. I mean, it's just it's very strong. Let's get to Jimmy's column that should be on offthehooksports.com as it was being posted as we speak, and it leads us to what the H, and it's brought to you by Zen Sports.
What the? What was he thinking?
Release the hounds.
The Dave Hooker Show.
Keep cool.
A presentation of offthehooksports.com.
49 points. Tennessee dominates the line of scrimmage, 5.5 yards per carry. Joe Milton against a soft defense looked effective, except for a little streak of about, 5 or so plays in the first half. But Jimmy's column is why Tennessee fans should not be worried about the Vols offense. On the surface, if you're somebody reading this after watching that first game that lives, in Nevada, you're like, well, why in the world would they be worried? But Jimmy, you wrote this for a reason. You must be hearing that some fans are a little bit concerned after what Tennessee did last year, that maybe they took a step back. What's your take on that?
Well, there was a survey that was, do you feel like Tennessee's offense is clicking? The other question was, are you worried about their offensive performance? Or the third part of that was their offense has a long way to go, something like that. 46% were worried about the offense. Now, there's several things where I would disagree with that. Number one, it's game one. Look at Ohio State in game one. How did they look? Even Georgia, as Caleb pointed out, they didn't look very good on offense for a while during the course of that game. Not a lot of teams are clicking on all cylinders. But Joe Milton did throw for over 200 yards. He has not thrown an interception during his Tennessee career, and that's 174 pass attempts. He also was a more engaged, more authoritative runner. I was looking for that. You didn't see that last year out of him. I thought he did a better job of running the football. I thought his reads were good. I thought his decision-making on who to throw to was good, with maybe one or two exceptions. He had one series where he threw 3 bad passes. But look at that run game. You don't have Cooper Mays. You run for 287 yards. One back gets, 12 carries, another 12, another 13. One back averages 9.6 yards a carry. Another back scores 4 touchdowns. The receiving core, which I think is exceptional. I don't think they were always on the same page with Milton, but again, that's game one. So I think this offense is really good. Taking a step back, yeah. Now, a step back to me is going from averaging 46.5 points to 40. 40 is still going to be in the top 10 in the country, maybe the top 3 in the SEC. So their offense is still going to be exceptionally good. And what I kind of chuckle at is, as I wrote my column, Josh Heupel has raised the bar on offensive expectations. When you get 49 points and you're worried about your offense, goodness gracious, I wonder what Jeremy Pruitt's thinking.
Well, I don't know, just how to get through the day, probably. But Caleb, I actually feel better about Tennessee's offense after seeing the game on Saturday, because I think they'll be able to control the ball. I thought that Cooper Mays would be a bigger loss than it was. Yeah. Again, we're talking about Virginia, but Caleb, I feel better about Tennessee's offense to be able to control the ball when they want to in the running game. And I think the big passes downfield will happen. Virginia was playing very soft.
Yeah, I agree. And also, how much do we think Heupel played a lot closer to the vest because he knew he was facing Virginia and wasn't too worried about what he was going to deal with? I think that Tennessee is largely okay. Jimmy, it's funny you brought up the 174. I think Hooker set the record for 261. Mm-hmm. Tennessee doesn't play Alabama until, 6 games later. How possible is it that Joe Milton breaks that record of consecutive passes without an interception at Tennessee?
It's very possible. Now that we brought it up, somebody from Austin Peay is going to get one. But no, I think it's really possible. And the thing that's stunning, and I saw the News Sentinel wrote this, and it's a really good piece. Under Heupel, Tennessee's had 73 touchdown passes and 6 interceptions. Look at that touchdown-interception ratio. Nobody in the country the last 3 years has an touchdown-to-interception ratio close to that. And they've actually thrown, I think he wrote 830 passes under Heupel with 6 interceptions. Are you kidding me? That's an incredible ratio. So I think that they do a great job of coaching the quarterbacks to make great decisions. And I think that's reflected in that stat.
Jimmy, give me some history. You got a couple of years on me. Goodness gracious. I can't think of any quarterback to interception ratio that's even in that ballpark historically.
The best ratio I can remember for Peyton Manning was his sophomore year. I think he had 22 touchdown passes and 4 interceptions. Darryl Dickey, I think, when he took over for Tony Robinson, only had one interception. And he didn't throw that many passes, but I think he only had one interception. And he was very careful with the football. Most of his passes were screens or underneath throws. He didn't throw that many downfield. So I think Manning's 22-4 is one of the best that I can recall off the top of my head, other than what Hooker did. Hooker last year was 27-2, which is incredible. And then the year before he was, 31-4, something like that. So that's an amazing touchdown interception ratio. And we've seen, and right now Milton has 14 touchdown passes and no interceptions as a Tennessee quarterback.
Here's the other thing to remember, guys, is that I think that Joe Milton is going to be really good. And I feel like a broken record, but I've said this on the slant routes and dig routes, and maybe he's not as good downfield as Hooker, but that's fine as long as you're moving the chains, Jim. It
is. And one of his long balls that he threw, Ramel Keaton dropped it. So that if you give him that completion, that's, I don't know, was that 60 yards or so, whatever it would have been. Add that to his total. But having said that, I think that Joe Milton has become more conscious of not overthrowing people. He did that a lot his first year as a starter in 2021, the first couple of games. And then when he came in off the bench, he did the same thing in 2021. He didn't do that last year. And I think he's almost conscious, I think, of, well, I don't want to overthrow him. So if anything, I'm going to underthrow him a little bit. But he's been much more accurate with the deep ball, starting with the Clemson game, which Tennessee, Caleb doesn't think they played them, but they did. They played Clemson in a bowl game. And
I don't think Clemson's been playing football for a year.
But Duke would agree. But I do think Hooker's been more mindful of not overthrowing receivers. Give them a chance. Let your 6'4" Dante Thorntons or your guys jump up there and give them a chance to catch the football. So I think you'll see him be more accurate with the deep balls. Sometimes the slants bother me because if he misses a slant just by a little bit, then that overthrow could end up being an interception.
Very true. And it's coming in hot, so it's easy for the receiver to make the mistake as well, Caleb.
Yeah. Jimmy, one of the things that Dave actually brought up to me that's kind of interesting that you probably are familiar with, because I was so young in his prime, I didn't know it as well. But
we're old, what is Caleb saying?
No. I was 10 when I was watching. I see a lot of the Josh Heupel, Steve Spurrier comparisons. But Dave brought up that Heupel seems to have more patience, which is the sense that Spurrier would see he would run the ball, but he would eventually get restless and try to force his fun and gun system. Do you see with Heupel where, because you brought it up that they played soft coverage, if teams play soft coverage all game, doesn't Heupel seem the type that, okay, I'll just run it the whole game then. I'm not going to try to force my deep passes if you guys are going to sell out to stop it the whole game.
Yeah, well, he'll do two things. If he's got the numbers, and by spreading the field, a lot of times he has the numbers. When the defense only has 5 or 6 in the box, he's going to run the football because it just depends on what the safeties do and how they align. If they go and respect the receivers that are lined up 53 yards apart. Here's the other thing about him. If you play off of him, he'll continue to throw those little quick screens out there to Squirrel White or to Jalen Wright or somebody else. He'll continue to do that because he is more patient. Dave's exactly right. The other thing is you famously remember Steve Spurrier would throw his visor quite a bit as he got frustrated during the course of a game. I don't think Heupel would ever throw his visor. I think he is more patient. I think if you show that frustration, that carries over to your team. I think Spurrier, actually, as great as he was, I think he actually cost his team a couple of times when he would get frustrated and impatient.
Completely 110% agree with that. Do you remember that we were sitting one time in a retirement community with John Chavis, and that was before the 2001 season? And you said something off the air to the effect of, you kind of feel like you got him a little figured out, don't you? And he goes, maybe a little. And it was just to not allow him, no matter what, and that was the Prowler package year, to not get beat by the pass.
Yes. And so Tennessee recruited to that too. They recruited a lot more speed to keep up with Florida's receivers, and that's how they were able to sort of catch up with that Florida offense. Now, and so they would take a safety and move him to linebacker. A linebacker would go to defensive end. The defensive end would go to defensive tackle. They did everything they could to get more speed on the field, and that paid off against Florida some, not all the time, but it paid off some against the Gators.
Absolutely. Let's go to 4 downs now. And that is brought to you by our friends at Zen Sports.
4 downs. 4 questions. 4 answers. The Dave Hooker Show.
Four.
Downs. A presentation of offthehooksports.com.
Alrighty, the players that you need to watch, 5 players to watch for Austin Peay. Here is the list on offthehooksports.com. Why don't you go ahead and throw out the 5, and then I want to break those down with Jimmy. So, Caleb, you wrote the piece. Who are the 5 that Tennessee fans should keep an eye on this weekend?
All right, so I'm pulling it up now. Sorry, just give me 1 second. I'm the youngest one here, and somehow I turned into a boomer trying to figure out the internet. What's this internet thing you guys speak of?
Worldwide interweb. Thank you, Al Gore.
Yes. Hey, he invented it.
Yeah.
Okay, so here we go. Okay, so my 5, I figured that I don't know if you guys agree with me, but I'm doing my 5 based on what we need to see from people, because I don't think anybody's going to be that crucial to win this game. I think that Tennessee's going to sleepwalk. So I start with Danico Slaughter at number 5 because ASU Austin Peay does run some tempo. So I kind of want to see Danico Slaughter be tested at cornerback because I've heard a lot about him in the offseason. Brew McCoy was a little quiet last week, so that's the reason he's on the list. John Campbell Jr., the reason I have him here is there's no debate over whether or not he can block. We saw him lay some blocks against Virginia, some impressive ones that became highlight reels, but he still has mental lapses. He whiffed on that 4th and 1 running play. He had a penalty. So I just want to see if John Campbell can play clean. Aaron Carter at number 2, because Aaron Carter, I think Keenan Peele and Aaron Beasley Keenan Peele got a game ball for last weekend's performance. I think we're going to see more of the younger linebackers in this one. And then Nico, because I think the goal is for Tennessee to have a 50-point lead at halftime and Nico play the whole second half and get his feet wet.
That is, of course, the one, the only. That's right, because everybody gives me a hard time for his name. All right, let's get to 4 downs, brought to you by Zen Sports. And I want to get Jimmy's take on this list. Again, Zen Sports, man, that's where you need to be gambling nowadays. Zen Sports, the new sports book in Tennessee, revolutionizing the way you earn sports betting rewards. That means no more deposit bonuses that turn into deposit nightmares on Zen Sports. What you see is what you get with their cash rewards program. You get a lot of cash for a welcome bonus. Earn an unlimited 5% cash back on your betting volume for your first 15 days when you sign up with the promo code HOOKED. That's right, HOOKED. Unlimited 5% cash back. Keep betting, keep earning with up to 3% cash back on your betting volume every month after that, and refer friends to earn a percentage of their betting volume as cash rewards too. Zen Sports bringing the cash back to Tennessee. So if you bet big on sports, you want to be betting on Zen Sports. Zen Sports betting just got better. Coop, what down?
Coop here. First down.
First down. Jimmy, let me ask you this. Who would you add if this were a list of 6 players?
I would add Dante Thornton. Caleb mentioned Brew McCoy, and McCoy, we know what he can do. I don't know exactly what Thornton can do. So he was somewhat of a non-factor, as was McCoy. So I would add Thornton to that list to see if he can get on the same page and build some chemistry with Joe Milton.
Pretty good one. I got that. I actually can't do better than that. That's exactly who I would add. Very good. Who didn't make the cut, Caleb?
For me, Dante Thornton was actually in my mind. It kind of came down to Brew McCoy and Dante Thornton, so I have no debate with you guys on Dante Thornton. I also had Wesley Walker because I was between Danico Slaughter and Wesley Walker since both are starters now at cornerback and free safety. I saw a good bit from Wesley Walker towards the end of last year, so I still need to see more from Danico Slaughter, and that's why I put Slaughter in.
Okay. Let's go to second down. Coop?
Cooper Mays here. Second down.
Of those players, who impressed you the most in week 1, Jim?
Of those players?
Yes.
That we just talked about?
Of the 5 to watch on the list.
Gosh. That's hard to say.
And give us the 5 again, Caleb, if you can.
Danico Slaughter, John Campbell, Arian Carter, Nico, and Brew McCoy.
You know what? I'm going to go with Campbell of that group. For one, he went Michael Orr on blindside and blocked the guy up into the stands. I still am stunned he didn't get a penalty for that. But
wait till the Tuohys adopt him and tell him to go to Ole Miss
yep.
in a few days.
And yeah, so he showed a meanness that really impressed me. That to me, some of these offensive linemen need to get a mean streak in them, and some of them have been too passive. So that showed a mean streak. I also thought he did a really nice job of being the starting tackle for Tennessee. It's not easy to come in and take over that job, and he did so at the left tackle spot. So I'm going to say out of that group, I'm going to go with Campbell.
I'll go Brew McCoy, Campbell close second. Caleb?
I'm actually going to go to Nico just because the secondary didn't mess up in any way, which is an improvement.
That's fair. Coop, what down?
Tennessee center Cooper Mays here. Third down.
Should Joe Milton still be on this list, or is he a known commodity at this point with just one game in the 2023 season under his belt, Jim?
I think he's pretty much a known commodity. He's taken over the leadership of this team. What I liked about it is whenever he came out of the game, he was over there helping coach some of those players. He was helping Nico. And even then when the fans were chanting Nico, it didn't bother Joe Milton. He knows he's got the job. It's his. I liked his poise. I liked what he did as far as reading the defenses. I mentioned earlier that I thought he ran with more authority. To me, he's a proven commodity. I think he's going to be one of the 3 or 4 best quarterbacks in the SEC when the season's over.
I agree with that. Caleb, you agree?
Yep, I agree with both of you. I think he's a known commodity at this point.
I think it kind of leads to an easy answer on 4th down, right, Coop?
All SEC center Cooper Mays here. 4th down.
Could Nico be too good? Could he go out there and play at such a high level that people want him to play? Some of that cropped up on Vol Twitter. I don't, over the weekend when Joe Milton struggled for just a couple of plays. I don't think that's the case anymore. I think this is Joe's team, Jim.
I think it's Joe's team. Look, the most popular play on the team a lot of times is the backup quarterback. We've heard that. And Nico came in with a lot of notoriety, a lot of publicity, a 5-star, a $2 million a year guy. And so the fans are clamoring to see more of him. But I don't see him playing well enough to take over for Joe Milton. I don't see that at all. But I'll say this. I think Tennessee should be very excited about the future with Nico at quarterback.
No, I agree. Jimmy, get out of here. I don't know if you got golf or what you got going on today, but we can't tell you how much we appreciate the time. And his column is on offthehooksports.com. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. I got golf coming up. And don't worry about that Tennessee offense. They'll score 60 against Austin Peay.
They will. He is Jimmy Himes. Great stuff. Thanks again, Jim.
Thank you, guys.
Coming up on the program next, the Governors you should watch. And T. Martin, this is pretty cool, is part of the first all-black quarterback room in NFL history. Could he be a head coach one day? We'll talk to T on the Celebrate 98 series. We haven't at this point, but we will. You give me 2 minutes, and I'll tell you the Govs you need to know about. And Tennessee's going to play well. Tennessee's going to win, but here's some guys to keep an eye on. And kudos to T. Martin, especially on a Condridge Holloway week in which he was such a transcendent player in terms of race and football. With Caleb Calhoun, I'm Dave Hooker. 2 minutes.
Our family has been creating one-of-a-kind pieces of jewelry in West Knoxville since 1986. Each piece is a combination of unique processes that bring your idea to life. Every day in our shop, a truly special item with a story all its own is being manufactured in our facility, bringing the history and family sentiment into a whole new generation of life. We are grateful that you chose us to be Knoxville's best jeweler, a title that we value and respect. Because to me, being a jeweler and owning a jewelry store are not the same thing. I'm Rick Terry. I'm a jeweler, and we want to be your jeweler. Kingston Pike and Campbell Station Road in the heart of Farragut, and downtown on Gay Street right next to the Tennessee Theater.
Hi, Mike Davis here with City Heating and Air, reminding you to always dare to compare. Our team provides quality local heating and air service, installation, and maintenance across East Tennessee. We use only the best equipment like American Standard heating and air conditioning for your residential, new construction, or commercial needs. Honesty, dependability, and customer satisfaction have been the cornerstones of our business since 1961. City Heat and Air.
These mountains hold and defend a spirit far better than moonshine. A drink that holds flavor that becomes necessity. A hard cider made and relished by folk who are as hearty as they are legend. A refreshment that can only be found in one place. With a taste that makes you say, give me 3 bottles of the good stuff. Tennessee Cider Company, where necessity can be found.
What's up, everybody? This is Jacob Warren, asking you to like, subscribe, and share. Dave needs this.
Who's this guy?
Hello, wizard.
The Dave Hooker Show,
Who?
a presentation of Off the Hook Sports.
What?
YouTube, Apple, Spotify, and the free Off the Hook Sports app. Back to Dave Hooker.
By the way, Willie Galt's birthday was yesterday. How good was that cat? And how good was that run of receivers that they had? Wow. Pretty darn good.
Yes, that was from the 1970s on, and they don't have the same type of stats that you see receivers have now, which is why Clemson has claimed that they're the wide receiver U of modern day. But for Willie Galt and Larry Severs and Stanley Morgan, Stanley Morgan played running back at Tennessee before he became a receiver in the NFL. But Willie Galt, Larry Severs, Tim McGee, for them to put up Anthony Morgan, they put the stats they put up for the 80s were pretty darn impressive.
No, absolutely. So happy birthday to him. And of course, the track star. That's something that you kind of miss with the specialization of football nowadays. And Tennessee had a great history of that, of guys who could run track and a great track program. And, Fred White came to Tennessee to run both or to do both. And it's just really difficult. I knew it was difficult at the time to miss spring practice because of track. And I don't think the coaches are all for it anymore. And they can go in another direction in recruiting. If you say, hey, I'm going to miss spring practice, it's hard for me to imagine somebody voluntarily missing spring practice for anything, including track.
Yeah, it really is. It really is now, particularly nowadays. I mean, especially at the recruiting level, people who miss it to play baseball, their recruiting rankings, they actually get punished in the recruiting ratings when they do that. If they play another sport and don't do the football camps in high school, which to me is just an absolute embarrassment. I mean, I'm going to call out the recruiting services now. You shouldn't hold that against kids if they're playing another sport in the spring. You really shouldn't.
Some other great ones, Carl Pickens by Robert. That was on the message board. He was pretty good. Maybe the most talented receiver to ever play at Tennessee. Alvin Harper. I loved him when he was with the Dallas Cowboys, stretched the field, opened it up for Emmitt Smith. Robert, we're both showing our age. There's no question about it, but I got no problem with that. And then I accidentally clicked on the wrong one, so I don't know how I did that. I'm going to go back to Alvin Harper, and just so I know how to shut it off. There we go.
The most important play Carl Pickens ever made at Tennessee, though, was not a catch.
It was the return against Florida.
It wasn't the return. No, that was Dale Carter who had the return against Florida.
Oh, you're right. Sorry. Yeah, who was it?
The most important play Carl Pickens ever made. And see, I watch highlights and I can actually learn fundamentals of details of football from the 90s from watching highlights on YouTube. I'm just that good, guys. But
believe that.
Carl Pickens' most important play was selling the deep pass so the screen to Aaron Hayden could work out against Notre Dame. Carl Pickens ran his man all the way out of the back of the end zone. Have you ever watched that screen pass? The screen pass that gave Tennessee the lead against Notre Dame?
Yeah.
Look at Carl Pickens on that. He drew 2 men all the way to the back of the end zone.
Yeah. Stanley Morgan mentioned on the message board. Great job, guys. Keep them coming. And then you have Peerless Price.
My favorite receiver in Tennessee history.
Celebrate 98 series. Now, Charles brought up a good point. Todd Helton missed spring practice, I assume. Yes, I would think, since he's playing baseball. The other thing with Todd Helton is he really wanted to play football. I coincidentally, I think I told you this, worked out with his dad at the same time at the same gym and talked to him a lot. And I think Todd really wanted to play football more than baseball. He just wasn't really big enough. And let's face it, he's a darn good baseball player. So
I think he made the right choice.
The family made the right choice. Let's put it that way.
Yes. The family made the choice for him that Jalen Hurts' family should have made for him to play defensive end instead of running back.
I couldn't say it better myself. Let's get to some govs that Tennessee fans should keep an eye on. And there's a reason you should keep an eye on them this year, because you don't know if they could be Vols next year. Austin Peay is an in-state school with the transfer portal nowadays. We're seeing players play well at lower levels and move up. So this is kind of, the game's going to get out of hand, but this is a little bit of a scouting venture, I believe, that when you see the MTSUs of the world, when you see the Austin Peays of the world, you may see a guy that has developed late and has suddenly become a great athlete in his late teens instead of maybe as a high schooler when he was evaluated as a prospect. So get me rolling on the govs that we should keep an eye on, Caleb. Who's number 5 on your list? 5 govs to keep an eye on in the Austin Peay game. And it's brought to you in part by Herald Group Security Solutions, leadership, experience, specialization, addressing problems through unique mission-specific mitigation technique, also making your children safer one school at a time. Encourage your administrator to reach out to Herald Group Security Solutions. We know school shootings is a terrible thing. They can help avoid that with their school security solution. So what gov you got, Caleb?
Well, I love the name the Govs, by the way. I love that short form.
I hate it. I think it's stupid.
Well, I got to just for some history real quick, in 2 seconds. Austin Peay was established during the governorship of Governor Austin Peay in the 1920s. That's why they're called the Governors. How much of a narcissist do you have to be to establish a college named after you when you're the governor?
Pretty bad.
That's like Teddy Roosevelt putting his face on Mount Rushmore, which he was instrumental in.
Yeah, but if I started the university, the nickname would be the Hookers. All right, so what do you got? What gov do I need to keep an eye on?
Okay, so number 5 is Corey Chapman, a defensive back. He is a do-it-all secondary player. Had 7 tackles for a loss, 2 sacks, 2 picks, 2 pass breakups, and 67 tackles in 2022. Look, their defense wasn't good against Southern Illinois last week, but that was mainly due to turnovers on the offensive side. He still had half a sack and broke up a pass last week. So Corey Chapman is a pretty versatile threat at defensive back.
All right, I can roll with that. Potential future Vol. This game would have been last year, then certainly because Tennessee needed all kinds of help in the defensive backfield. Who is next?
So Chandler Curtin, the right guard, he was a freshman All-American at the FCS level last year. And it's funny you bring it up. Javonte Spraggins is probably gone this year. Tennessee's going to be looking for some right guards next year. Freshman All-American at the FCS level. Not crazy to think they couldn't emerge into a Power 5 player at some point.
Yeah, and I'm not talking about castaways from Austin Peay either. I am talking about legit players that make the move up, and we've seen those. I mean, in some ways, I would say Keenan Peely is that type of player. I think going from BYU to Tennessee is proof that he was better than evaluated. That's why he went to BYU, and it was close by. But then he goes to Tennessee, which is a step up. So not taking Austin Peay castoffs, but Austin Peay guys that are really good. Who else should we keep an eye on? I have a feeling that there is a tight end in the mix with a fantastic last name.
Yes, Jordan Goko. And he's going to be
I'm
there.
Coco for Go-Go catches. Go-Go catches.
Cuckoo for Goko Puffs.
Yes.
So last year, their main receiver was Drake McCree, but he's transferred to Texas Tech.
See, there's an example. There's an example of a guy who moved up.
Yes, exactly. And he transferred to the wrong school. Austin Peay may beat Texas Tech this year. I'm sorry. Bad joke.
But you would say Texas Tech's a better program than Austin Peay, right?
Yes, I was obviously kidding. Texas Tech is a better program.
Gotcha.
But yeah, no, he had 3 catches for 23 yards in the opener. Look, with questions still out there about Tennessee in the secondary, don't sleep on somebody like a tight end. All of their receivers are like in the 5'7" to 5'10" range. I think the defensive backs will handle them fine. But, a tight end could be a mismatch for Tennessee in pass coverage. So just watch out. That's all I'm going to say.
Yeah, and if you think about it, Tennessee loses Jacob Warren, And then McAllen Castles, I believe, just has 1 year left. You might want to double check me on that. So you never know. Now, I like a lot what they've got in Ethan Davis and the young man out of Europe. I like both of their upside. I especially like Ethan Davis. I'm going to go out on a limb here and say that I think Ethan Davis will be the most explosive tight end in Tennessee football history.
Whoa!
Is that
That's
insane?
out there. That's out there, bro.
Am I
That's
Skip
insane.
Bayless all of a sudden? No, I think athletically, I
No,
don't think
no,
they've
you
ever
would
had
be you would only be Skip Bayless if Ethan Davis had like one catch next year, and you said it doesn't matter. He was still the most explosive because somehow he made everybody else explosive around him. That would be the Skip Bayless move.
I think the best overall tight end will always be Jason Witten. Wasn't a great blocker, but he was a shield blocker, and he did play physical, and he was a very, very good tight end. But I think Ethan Davis is going to be a step faster, and once he gets the game down, I think he's going to be an Antonio Gates type of player, if you remember him, without the steroids and without getting too big and getting addicted to looking at yourself in the mirror. So I think that Ethan Davis, yeah, I'm going to, and I'll be the first to tell you that I'm wrong if I am wrong. Yeah, I make predictions sometimes, but I feel pretty good about this one. Now, part of the reason I feel good about this one is because Tennessee's tight ends, other than Jason Witten, are who? I mean,
Well, would have been Brad Cottam if he wasn't hurt in 2007, because Brad Cottam was a big threat.
If some butts and candies and nuts, what a Merry Christmas we'd have there, Caleb.
Even it was during a bad era, Michael Rivera was pretty good too at Tennessee. There was some,
but he's not in a Witten category.
No, he's not. He's not. Ethan Wolf should have been good, but Butch Jones didn't know how to use him. So I mean, how many times have I said that on this show?
Yeah, I will give you Ethan Wolf could have been analogous to Jason Witten if used right. I'll give you that one. I will definitely give you that one. Wolf with the knee. Don't forget how to spell that. Tyler Long at linebacker. Another transfer is maybe Austin Peay's the new destination school in the state. I don't think so, but
he transferred from Norfolk State. Had 5 sacks, a forced fumble, an interception, and a pass breakup at 106 tackles. And in the opener, he did have 17 tackles, only 2 solo, but he was all over the field. So, again, I don't think Tennessee really has to worry, but just expect to hear his name called a decent bit on Saturday.
And we didn't mention Chris Brown, who I love, by the way.
The tight end. Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, love me some Chris Brown. And then number 1, the quarterback, Mike, what's the dealio, Leo?
What's the dealio?
What's the dealio? As a quarterback, I mean, if they're going to keep it close, he's got to play at a high level. Tell me why he's so good. First, I want to tell you Hemp House, the premier hemp dispensary online with a wide variety, great selection, and strict standards to ensure that you only receive the best in CBD or Delta products. We'll have a promo code soon. Go to hemphousechat.com, hemphousechat.com. And what if, I'm just saying, what if we had a CBD treat? Let me ask the message board that was in a power tea that got you in a really good mood, was orange. And what if it was called the Big Orange Crunch and it was available in our soon to be launched merch store? What if? Would that be a good idea?
That would be a great idea.
Thank you. Stay tuned. Stay tuned. We got things are happening. Tell me about Mike. What's the dealio?
So Mike Dealiello, you confuse me with the way you're doing that now, because I would say that he was a Division I quarterback, came from MTSU, and last year he did throw for over 2,400 yards, and he ran for over 400 yards. So he is a dual threat. Did throw 2 picks in the opener, though. I don't think he's really any threat to Tennessee on Saturday. I'm just saying that if he's to make this a game at all, he will have to be a dual threat and kind of make this entry interesting. But yeah, keep an eye on him. Put it this way, he's going to be better than Tony Muskett.
Yes. Rocky Top Tom says Big Orange Kush maybe is the new nickname. That's not the worst in the world.
Kush.
Yeah. Lance Pepper, That's weird. I know a guy named Lance Lepper. David Martin was a tight end, right? He was in the NFL. And if you remember a Monday Night Football game for the Packers, John Madden went crazy talking about how they got this guy. And I'm here to tell you, boom, bam, boom, he's going to be great. Well, it's because they moved him to tight end because they were paying him to do so. He refused to move to tight end while at Tennessee, which was a huge, monstrous mistake. He should have agreed to make the move because he wasn't quite fast enough to play receiver. Had he been a tight end, I will say this, had he been a tight end the day he walked on campus and developed those skills, David Martin, not exaggerating, David Martin would have been the second best tight end in Tennessee history to Jason Witten, would have made a couple of Pro Bowls, would have been an all-SEC tight end. I kid you not, but he absolutely refused to move. It's one of the few times that I've seen a player refuse to move and they kept him on the team. I mean, usually it's they jettison you out.
Here's the crazy part, too, because remember, after Peerless Price in 98, no disrespect to Cedric Wilson in 99, but I think Tennessee was a little bit shorthanded in how they could distribute the ball to receivers in 99 and 2000. Don't you think David Martin could have helped T. Martin out a lot had he played tight end in 99 and given T. Martin another option?
Brother, I'm with you. I mean, everybody in the program thought he should move to tight end. Every analyst thought he should move to tight end, but he did not. I mean, I think he is right up there with Alvin Kamara's as far as untapped potential at Tennessee. I think Kamara would have been an all-SEC player. Who are some of the others that you would throw out there? Not to get off on a tangent, because I do want to get to this T. Martin topic, but who are some other players? And fill us in on the message board. Let me hear a couple of you, because who are some players that just had unfilled potential? Another one I would add, because of injury, not his fault, Michael Munoz. I never thought he was the dominant player that he would have been if not for the injuries. Who else would you float out there as guys that did not reach their potential?
Man, I'm just going through the Butch Jones era at this point because I'm thinking Josh Malone, Pig Howard. Now, Pig Howard did get dismissed from the team, but still, it's a who's who of misused players from that time period. John Kelly. It's bad. Now, if I were to go to the former years, when I watched, I've since changed my opinion. I did feel that they were criminally underusing Montario Hardesty when he was playing for Fulmer, and I felt I was proven right when Lane Kiffin came in and made him the starter. But you pointed out to me that they wanted Montario Hardesty out there. They just couldn't get him out there because he couldn't stay healthy.
Yeah, he had my 50-year-old knees. Should Tennessee continue to play lower-level schools like Austin Peay 90 seconds? We'll get into that. I'm going to tell you why they should for now, but they won't for long. Also, this about T. Martin is super cool. Part of the first all-black quarterback room in NFL history. Could he be a head coach one day? 90 seconds. We're back. He's Caleb Calhoun. I'm Dave Hooker.
Before Candace, I was really heavy into the drug culture. I was selling drugs. I was just constantly in pain. I was missing like a good support system in my life. Candace has given me everything that I need in order to successfully have a wonderful recovery, in order to have a life that I didn't even know was possible. And it's not just about me anymore, and I love that. I absolutely love it.
You can take your life back. Call Cadis today.
With all that sun, sand, and salt water, the beach is a very relaxing place. Unless you wear contacts. Ow! Open your eyes to the best the beach has to offer with Lasik vision correction from Campbell, Cunningham Laser Center.
Sports Treasures in North Knoxville is one of the South's largest sports cards and memorabilia dealers, featuring over 10 million sports cards from vintage to modern. Sports Treasures carries a full line of hobby boxes, singles, autographed memorabilia, Tennessee Vol collectibles, fan cave decorations, and so much more. See a museum full of collectibles at Sports Treasures, 4819 North Broadway in Fountain City, and Sports Treasures on Facebook. Sports Treasures, where the real sports fan goes to shop.
A college football tradition like no other.
Yes, sirree, boys and girls.
Or a guy that just won't leave.
Wow. Dad, is sad.
The Dave Hooker Show, YouTube, Apple, Spotify, and the free Off the Hook Sports app. A presentation of Off the Hook Sports. Back to Dave Hooker.
Well, we had another mention on the message board, one that could have been absolutely great. Now, if we want to talk off-field issues, that's a whole different conversation. But LaMarcus Coker. But, yeah, I mean, LaMarcus Coker's background was when you go home for Thanksgiving, the first thing you do is, or not Thanksgiving necessarily, but spring break, whatever, the first thing you do is you catch up with your friends and your family and your uncles, and you smoke a big joint on the front porch. Back when that would give you a failed drug test and it wasn't legal and it wasn't viewed upon like it is now. So, I mean, LaMarcus, yes, made some bad decisions, but the backdrop, I think, should be taken into account. Some other guys that maybe were underutilized. I got about Pig Howard. Yeah, I guess we could name a bunch of guys in that decade that we shouldn't even mention, 2010 to 2020. Probably a lot of guys there. All right, Caleb, should FBS schools continue to play FCS schools? And I don't know why we're still using those acronyms, because they're both FCS. They're all FCS schools because there's a playoff. But anyway, games like Tennessee and Austin Peay, should they continue to happen? What say you?
Yes, I think they should for a few reasons. Now, the reason I brought this up, guys, for whoever is wondering, is because next year the SEC is going to go to 16. Look, Dave and I both think it's only a matter of time before the SEC and Big Ten are both at 24 teams, 25 teams, and breaking off, and it's just going to change the whole complexion of college football. I still think when that happens, they should work out a way to play an FCS school a year for two reasons. One, you play them in September. It kind of does help you figure out a little bit more about your football team, because it's like a preseason game, isn't it, Dave? It's like a glorified scrimmage,
or a bye week. If you want to look at it,
or
like
a bye week. Yeah, it's like an extra bye week. I would actually be okay if they decided, like, let's do week 0, the week before Labor Day weekend. Every major team plays an FCS team that weekend. And it's like an exhibition weekend for everybody. So it's kind of like it's a tune-up game. You get to find out about your team. It's like exhibition games in basketball, which you always have two versions of. So I think it helps the teams. But from the other side, what people don't realize, guys, these FCS programs, the thing that keeps them afloat is going on the road once a year and getting their brains beat out by a Power 5 elite program that's going to fill the stadium. And then that Power 5 program will write them a check. And if you get rid of that, you're going to see these FCS teams all go by the wayside. And I don't think that's good for the country. I think there's a lot of great high school football players who aren't going to get recruited by top schools, who this is their only chance to go play football. And I think that's good just for the college experience, one, but two, you find some kids out of FCS every now and then that stumble their way into the NFL. I mean, you're going to close off a massive you're going to limit the number of opportunities to play college athletics if you don't have these games.
Okay, well, I agree with that, what you said. And it's going to hurt lower level schools like Austin Peay. So as we stand right now, I believe that you either play Austin Peay or you play Michigan, Notre Dame, Southern California. You play a big name school. There's no in between. Like the UTSA matchup, I don't get why you would schedule that. When was that scheduled, Caleb? I mean, UTSA has been a pretty good program. Could they come in and upset Tennessee? Yeah, I mean, it's unlikely, very unlikely. But it's much more likely than Austin Peay. So if you see what I'm getting at, you either give money back to football, and no doubt, like Marshall. I never understood why they played Marshall. And back in 2005, had Stan Hill not turned his ankle, Marshall might have beaten Tennessee in Neyland Stadium. That would have been horrible for the program. So I never understood why you would schedule those type of guys. You either play somebody elite that a loss doesn't ding you too much in the college football playoff and that you get a lot of pub out of, or you play an Austin Peay, MTSU, preferably in-state, to give them the money. Now, that being said, what I ultimately want to happen, and I know some people on the message board are going to get mad at me, I want every game on the schedule to be losable. Okay. I want like the NFL. Okay. And I know you think I'm crazy, but I want a 9-3 season worthy of making a 12-team playoff, which it will be, and every game's exciting. Maybe I'm being selfish because I've sat through some North Texas games that the game was over before the band took the field for pregame. And that's what I would like to see, 12 quality games. How many quality games does Tennessee have on their schedule this year? I mean, that truly quality games that they could lose that you're going to sit there and sit through. And even if an Ohio State, Michigan, or Florida, LSU is on the other channel, you're going to sit through. How many of those games are on the schedule?
Oh, I mean, maybe 5, 4. Like, now, I do count South Carolina, Texas A&M, Florida in this quality game situation.
Well, no, I would count South Carolina, Texas A&M, and Florida because they're in the conference. But okay. I wouldn't mind,
like, because Vanderbilt's in the conference, so
right? I wouldn't mind. That's what I was going to say. I wouldn't mind jettisoning Vanderbilt. I mean, if you want to get rid of Vanderbilt, you could. Now I know they're not going to. They're original charter members, right, of the SEC, and they're not going anywhere. But I would like for all 12 games to be real contests. So and I know D's saying we could lose this Saturday. Not likely, but it could happen. I don't think it's even within the realm of possibility. So those are the games I would remove, Caleb, from the schedule. Once that movement comes where the Big Ten and the SEC are like the AL and NL, and you have a super conference. Once that comes, now I'm not saying I would do it now. I mean, I wouldn't schedule Notre Dame, Miami, blah, 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 all those teams back to back to back. You still need some soft opponents with the way college football is set up now, but it's not going to be set up like that for very much longer.
Yeah, with the Big Ten and the SEC, what's going to happen is they're going to get so big. They're going to separate. The one good thing about it is people who think conferences are dying, Dave, you know this, they're going to get so big, they're going to create conferences within the conference at this point. And then there will be more control and new rivalries will come out of that. I think you'll have a situation where you play all of your conference games, then your conference games, a couple of games with the Big Ten on the other side. And yeah, I think you can get 11 out of that. And then one game a year against one of the teams that's iced out from the new major league that you're talking about. I think one game a year is fine just to keep these programs afloat. And I think here's what I don't want to happen. I don't want to see college football programs drop like flies that are decent programs at smaller levels that have potential to have a decent fan base, all because they're not in the SEC or Big Ten, because we know they can't compete. They can never realistically compete. Like, even it's funny, you brought up MTSU. MTSU is never going to be in the SEC or the Big Ten. Ever, ever, ever. That's not happening. They are not capable of competing at that level. That's fine. That doesn't mean that that their school, their fans, and those players don't have a right to have a decent football program for where they're at.
No, all great points. Now, Tom says replace Austin Peay with Virginia Tech. No offense, Tom. We agree on a lot, but not this one. Virginia Tech is the exact kind of opponent I would not schedule, because they're going to get up for that game. They're not a lowly opponent, but unless you hold it in Bristol Motor Speedway, which was stupid, unless you do that, you're not going to get a lot of pub off of the game. So Virginia Tech, even though I know it's a rivalry up there, Tom, and I don't want to dismiss that in the Tri-City area, that's the exact kind of opponent I would not put on the schedule.
Yes. Do you remember, just for reference, back in the late 90s, Tennessee kind of learned this because they were scheduling Memphis every year, and Memphis was putting up a fight. I mean, they beat them one time because Memphis had a top 5 defense every year, even though they weren't a good team. And it's like, that's not who you want to play when you know Memphis is going to get up for that game and you're just trying to get out of there with the win and call it a day.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's talk some T. Martin. T. Martin is a coach, as you know, a former Vol. He is with the Baltimore Ravens. He has had a very successful career, bounced a little bit from place to place, kind of got caught up in all that Southern California mess. And he is part of the first, we believe, all African-American quarterback room from players to coaches. So assistant coaches, quarterbacks coach Kerry Dixon, quarterbacks coach T. Martin, quarterback Tyler Huntley, quarterback Lamar Jackson, quarterback Josh Johnson. It's incredibly cool, but it brings up the question of T. Martin. Will he ever be a head coach? I'm sure that was his aspiration at one point. Sometimes people set that aside either because they have to or because they realize it's such a stressful job. But T. Martin, will he ever be a head coach? Will he have that opportunity? I don't think the African-American aspect of it works against him nearly as much as it did even 10 years ago. But I think that his ability to adapt and what he did in that 98 season makes me think he would be a good head coach. Is he as affable and outgoing to be a recruiter? I mean, I don't know. That's a tough thing. Let me get your take, and it's brought to you by Rick Terry Jewelry Design. They want to be your jeweler. Looking for affordable game day jewelry? How about the Fire Opals, a Tennessee tradition? RickTerryJewelry.com. Tell them Off the Hook Sports sent you. Support our advertisers. That's why we're here. T. Martin, could he be a head coach?
Let me make the case against him first, and then I'll make the case for him. So the case against him is that his stint as an offensive coordinator at USC didn't work out the way people had hoped. He got demoted before he went to Tennessee. The other case against him is that I don't think he's like a guru on one side of the ball where he has a system where like he would, the way Josh Heupel does. And I know Josh Heupel's like, that's another stratosphere from everybody, but I don't think T. Martin is going to be like this offensive coach calling plays and developing the game plan and then letting the defense run the show like a Lane Kiffin or anything like that. The case for T. Martin, one, at USC, he did win a Pac-12 title and win the Rose Bowl one year. And we know that it was just a disastrous situation. Clay Helton was fired after T. Martin left. Two, T. Martin is actually one of the best receivers coaches that college football ever saw. He made great receivers in college football. Three, he actually is a really good recruiter. He coached in high school in Georgia for a little while, so he's got really good connections. T. Martin could absolutely recruit. And one of the things that I give T. Martin credit for, and this is for...
I thought you were making a case against.
Now I'm making it for. Sorry,
okay.
I started against. Now I'm going for.
Okay.
And for, and the biggest one, he's got like a Zen-like patience to him. We talked about that with Heupel earlier, where I think this helped the 98 team versus the 97 team, whereas Peyton was so all on you all the time, and T. Martin was much more relaxed when things were not going as well. And I think that Zen-like patience is much more effective for a head coach than like, again, like a Peyton Manning or a Michael Jordan who would be more like Steve Spurrier as a head coach. They would throw their visor down every play.
You have to be the rock. You have to steady the ship. And I think that's what T. Martin, that's the kind of coach that he would be. And T. Martin too, he played under David Cutcliffe. I mean, that's a great, fundamentally solid offensive mind. Maybe not exotic like a Josh Heupel, but he picked up a lot of that. So I think that would greatly help. Portions of the program brought to you by Sports Treasures, carrying over 5 million sports treasures and so much more. One of the biggest memorabilia shops in the Southeast. Follow on Facebook for the best sports memorabilia updates. Again, Sports Treasures TN, Sports Treasures TN, if you go to Facebook. Now, impossible question to answer. Would he be successful?
I think he would be successful kind of in a former way. He would have to get the right staff around him, and where he could actually then go recruit, be the CEO, and kind of be the, like you said, calming of the ship. The question, I don't know how long that can last. I'll tell you this, if T. Martin took a job at Georgia or Alabama, I think he'd be successful because, Dave, as you know, you can do that at Georgia and Alabama or at a Miami or Florida where all you have to do is focus on recruiting. I think at Tennessee might be a little bit trickier because you can't just fall out of bed and get a top 5 class at Tennessee. You can fall out of bed and get a top 15 class at Tennessee, but you can't fall out of bed and get a top 5 class at Tennessee.
Lance says T was the most important player UT ever signed out of the state of Alabama. Do you agree with that?
Oh, wow, over Condredge Holloway himself. Wow.
That's the first name that came to mind. Condredge was more important from a social perspective, being the first black quarterback in the history of the SEC. But impact on the field, if T. Martin isn't willing to wait another year, when Peyton Manning says he's coming back, if he's not willing to come to Tennessee behind Peyton Manning in the first place, if he doesn't come through in 98 the way he did, his willingness to take slightly adapted playbook that wasn't as aggressive as it was with Peyton Manning, they don't win a national championship. So I would have to say that, yes, he's the most important player UT ever signed out of the state of Alabama. I would have to say that. And that's not a knock on Condredge and Condredge Holloway's big week with the throwback jerseys. But yes, I would have to say that's T. Martin.
And if T. Martin were to become a head coach one day and become successful, I don't think there's a football figure alive who would have a better movie to be made about him than T. Martin. I mean, his life story is incredible. I mean, he came from nothing in Mobile, Alabama. Sports Illustrated, after Tennessee won the national title, did an expose. I mean, he's lost. By the time he was in college, he had lost like 12 friends to gun violence alone. And
I wasn't aware of that, actually.
Yeah, and do you know how he became a football player in the first place? He was an avid reader.
No, I didn't.
He was an avid reader. And when he was like 10 years old, just reading outside of a football practice in a field in Mobile, a loose ball came and he threw it back to the coach, and the coach liked the way he threw the ball and asked him to keep throwing it. And that coach got him into youth football. And that's how he got in. I mean, that's a Hollywood story if you've ever heard one, isn't it? And
yes, you would have to address the fact that he might have gotten paid to come to Tennessee. But that's another chapter to that book. He's Caleb Calhoun. I'm Dave Hooker. One of my favorite lines of all time is Tennessee Sports Information wasn't making people available like I thought they should. And they had, remember those wax statues they had of Peyton Manning and T. Martin? Do you remember those they were in the little Hall of Fame area where we do interviews? And I said, hey, Bud Ford, would you be upset if I stuffed some dollar bills in T. Martin's pockets up there? Like slightly hanging out. I was pretty proud of that.
On the record, though, that's the least of scandals, because who cares if he was getting paid at that point? I mean, I'm sorry.
Well, he didn't get paid by Tennessee. He got paid by a Tennessee booster his junior year when he started becoming a prospect.
What?
Listen, I thought I'll pay him now. I thought they should have gotten paid back then. By the way, Tennessee Cider Company, go to tncidercompany.com. The original hard cider of the Smoky Mountains. Use that promo code HAT to receive some free swag with any order. How about a hat with awesome cider? Please do that. Support our sponsors and our advertisers. That's why we're here. Go to tncidercompany.com and you can order cider from just about anywhere in the United States of America. Have a fantastic evening, day, night, afternoon, whenever you're watching. For Caleb Calhoun, I'm Dave Hooker. This has been a presentation of Off the Hook Sports.